Listeners, just picture this that you are at a family gathering, and amidst all the laughter, you notice a child mimicking their parents' every gesture and tone. It's fascinating how a child, without consciously knowing, starts to mirror the behaviors, habits, and even the emotional responses they witness at home. Our homes are more than just a place to comfort. They are the first classrooms where children absorb life lessons, sometimes unspoken. And today, we dive into this complex dynamic with our guest, Divyanshi Lohiya, a wellness expert with a unique journey from biotechnology to psychology and a deep understanding of how our environment shapes us. Welcome, Divyanshi.
Thank you so much, Pulkit. Thank you so much.
So, how come the shift from being from the biotechnology background to psychology? How did that journey
I
happen?
think there's a history to that as well. I was always good in studies, come from a very small town in UP. And when a girl is good in studies, what is she supposed to do? Be an engineer or a doctor, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
And then I went to a really nice boarding school and I was good in studies. My father said, "Oh, you're really good in studies. You always score 90 plus. You'll be a doctor." So before biotech, I went to Kota for a year, and yeah, I prepared for MBBS. Being in that race, obviously you do not realize that, yeah. All in that moment, that child is like, oh, my father, he sees something in me. He wants me to be a doctor, and see, I'm good in studies. So I think it's a lot of ego. It comes from a place of ego also because you feel better about yourself. And there was a turning point because I saw a lot. I was always in a comforted environment at my boarding school and my home, and that really pinched a bubble. And I went through mentally, I went through a lot. Took bio, prepared for MBBS, did not clear it. And obviously, now I have bio. What to do? Did not clear MBBS. Let's go for biotech. I think there was very conventional way of me feeling safe. People not asking me that, oh, you did not get into MBBS. Now what? I'm doing BSc biotech now. I think that comes from that space. And a lot happened after that. But majorly, if you'll ask me from biotech to psychology, what happened? I think my own mental health, it was really bad. I started traveling a lot and I started practicing breath work through one of the institute. So I was doing their practice, spiritually volunteering there, going to different solo travels, meeting people. I think that really somehow now that I look back, at that time I had no idea that this is shaping up. But now when I look back, I realize that, all these small, small things contributed to where I am today. Yeah. So it was like that.
Amazing, amazing. I can totally relate to, I've just been in Kota for a year.
Yeah.
For me, instead of just medical, it was engineering, IIT, JEE.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the dream, And for me, it was not just like my father asked me to do it. It was just because of the influence, as was
Influence.
there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw certain things at house and I was like, okay, ठीक है. I don't want all of this thing to happen with my career path. So I was like, for me, I have an elder sister. So when she wanted to
Mm.
go for, medical and everything, there were a lot of fights. No, you have to do engineering and
Mm.
everything. I was like, okay, no, I will not let this happen. I will go for engineering directly. And
Yeah.
since I directly opted for engineering, my father was like, okay, go, you're going to Kota. That was like for him something getting what he didn't, he didn't even ask
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
went there for to Kota, and again, the first 4 5 months, I cried to sleep every night.
So true. So
So
true.
that was such a drastic shift for me from
Mm.
being a child who has always been safeguarded, who has
Mm.
never stepped out of his house, has always been under the shadow of his parents.
Yeah.
And now you're all your own. You have everything in front of you. You're given that exposure.
Mm.
Uh, Name the thing, and you had access to it in quota.
Yeah. So true.
So managing all that and the life that happens to you,
Yeah.
you
It's
get to
overwhelming.
understand.
Yeah. It's so overwhelming. And people struggling through their mental health and you witnessing them struggling through mental health is also a form of challenge that people go through a lot in Kota.
Yes, yes, totally, totally.
Yeah.
And you know, quota is such a close topic to my heart. It always brings a lot of memories out, both good and bad. Uh, and in last 1 year, Divyanshi, we worked together on a project
Mm.
for one of the biggest edtech startups in India as well.
Yeah.
And from there, a lot of conversations ensued within Anya Wellness as an organization as well,
Mm.
which revolved to do a lot with students in quota. The number of episodes of suicides that were happening in the previous year and even this year as well, I
Yeah.
talked to some of the authorities out there, and to my surprise, some of the people I thought at least would give me some form of positive response, nobody wanted to acknowledge the elephant in the room.
Yeah, nobody. It's the business that will get impacted, right?
That's true. That's true. And nobody wanted to take the responsibility out there. But it's a very big ecosystem out there. There are a lot of subjective conversations which have a lot of dynamism in its
Mm.
nature. But something that's really close to a child's heart, the
Mm.
a child's safe place, a safe haven,
Safe.
is
Yeah.
his or her home.
Yeah.
How can, a house play the role of shaping up a child?
I think everything around the house. I'll give you a very simple example from today's morning only. So my father were using sarcasm in the house. Just now when I was coming here and I went to him and I said, I see you using a lot of sarcasm these days. If there's something that needs to be talked, can we sit and talk? Because there are three kids around. They'll pick up. They'll pick up. You'll have no idea that how they'll use sarcasm. So if you'll talk about, let's say, coping mechanism, the way you cope up is something that you learn the way parents cope up or your immediate environments cope up. Very simple example, father is stressed, came from the office. So when he came from this office, you see he is very stressed. What he did? Turned on the television, started watching news. So he's already very stressed. And what did he do after that? Overstimulated. We feel better. Why? Because there's a stage of numbness. Your nervous system, with so much of information, becomes numb. So you don't feel anything. Very subconscious act of coping up. So the way the stress is being managed in the house through the father or through the mother or through the siblings is something that you learn. In case of mother, let's say she is working or she is working in the house or maybe she's outside. She's very irritated. She wants help, but the partner is not there. So what she'll do? Irritation, the loud words, different way that she'll cope up. So I always say that learning to manage emotion, it's a privilege. It's something that you are not born with, to be very honest. So it's really important for you, even if you are an adult now, it's really important to tap that while growing up, how was the environment? So that you understand about your own coping mechanism because you really don't want to pass those same to your kids.
Yeah.
And I feel the kids are very smart. We can't go and say to our parents that why didn't you go for the therapy because there was no therapy available, no awareness. Imagine yourself if you see yourself embracing parenthood, a child coming to you and saying you had all the awareness, you had all the resources, still you chose not to work on yourself. Then tell me, what will you answer? It's a scary question that sometimes even I ask myself, and I was like, I think I'm done working. There's so much of self work. Sometimes you're exhausted, right? And I was
Yes.
like, what if my child says, Mama, what did you do? Where's the self work? And I'm like, yeah, it really shapes.
That's true. That's true. Again, at times, I also often think when you're totally exhausted with whatever is happening around, and you ask what's the purpose of all of the hustle bustle you're doing,
Mm,
and mostly the answer is nothing.
nothing.
It's just that you're doing to survive and
Survive.
stay true to the expectations the society has set out there.
Mm,
If you truly get dive deep into it, find the actual meaning of things,
mm.
it's nothing. What you actually
It's
require for your
nothing.
survival is
Yeah,
just food for 3 times, which you can get by
yeah,
doing anything out on this earth.
yeah. And you said very rightly, like what you said is actually your answer there, that how the parents shape. The way you look at the society and the way you consider the impact of society directly depends on the way your parents introduce society to you while growing up. If you had a parents or we had a parents who like we are in the society, but what really matters is how how do we live this life? It's not about the society who is going to be there for you always. So your relationship with society gets the seed comes from the way parents live and introduce you to the society. If you have a very liberated parents who are like it's fine even if they do not agree, but what really matters is you doing things from your heart and that brings the joy and the purpose to you. Then even if you'll be surprised, there's so many people I know society is not supporting them yet they are doing what they are doing, like the unconventional way. And I keep thinking that what is different here? Because society is there no matter what, wherever you go. But these people, they're so unconventional that, so I feel like that's the self work that they have done, detaching themselves from the perspective and the relationship with the society.
That's true. That's true. I want to ask one thing from you, Divyanshi. Uh, a lot of times, and especially the way the society has been brought up, it has been a patriarchal society, for the majority
Mm,
of human existence.
mm,
And a lot of times I've seen that if you have to take a stand for yourself, you have to start to say no.
yeah,
But often, and I might be wrong in saying this, but I've seen a lot of females refraining from saying no because they're
yeah,
afraid of the consequences that are going to come along with it.
yeah,
Somewhere or the other, and I want to understand the impact coming in from the childhood of this for this
mm,
particular, reaction to taking a stand for yourself. And I've seen in
mm,
some of the male friends as well, where you don't take a stand because you don't want to deal with the repercussions or consequences that are going to come after that. You want
mm,
to be in that so-called, I will not say the safe zone, but something that you're accustomed to or of that zone. You are
yeah.
so in fear of the new things that are going to come, which is going to have both positives and negatives. But instead of focusing on the positives, you only focus on the negatives, and you
Mm,
don't take that step.
mm.
How is a childhood upbringing impacting these decisions?
I think when you talk about childhood upbringing, not only that, but their present life also plays a very important role. I'll talk about both things, okay? We'll talk about two things here. First, there's a very beautiful concept in Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure you have heard Swadharma. I really like that term. Yeah. So Swadharma means doing something and understanding what you're made up of, your core, right? Everybody's core is so different. Maybe what you like and what I like can be very different. Why? Because your swadharma is like that and my swadharma is like that. Example: a fish is swimming and a monkey is jumping on a tree. Fish is looking at the monkey, I wish I could jump like that on a tree. And monkey is looking at the fish saying that I wish I could swim something like that, and they both tried. He came inside the water and she went out on a tree, and they really struggled and they had to come back, right?
Yep.
So when you want to do something, it is really important for you to do something according to your swadharma, because you know that you are naturally good with this, your sense of purpose, what you are good with. If and that is your anchor in today's life. So if you'll try to do a little experiment with yourself, the things that you really don't align with, it'll be difficult for you to take a stand for those things, because there'll be a self doubt. You'll question yourself, the fear of failures, because you know you're naturally not good with it. And the other things that you know that you really like, and this is something that you truly connect with, and you would like to grow it, you'll notice naturally you're able to take a stand for this. Okay. Now the second part comes: why there are people, even if they know that this is what their true passion is, and they are not able to take the stand. It all comes to the survival, somewhere or the other, the finances. When I say survival, it's not only about food, it's not only about money, it can also be about safety. That what if they have money? What if they have all the financial help, but they feel unsafe? What if somebody does to me? Comes from the past. Okay. Then the last thing which I very find very commonly in my session is emotional void. Now, this is where the parental part comes from. Let's say while growing up, they did not have parents who were emotionally available to them. When I say emotionally available, they were crying and all they were told that shut up, you are a boy, or maybe you can't cry. Or maybe they wanted to talk about certain emotions, but parents were not there emotionally. Why? Maybe they had a lot of work, or maybe they were not in touch with their own emotions. So now imagine a scenario where parents were not there. Okay? And then when they grew up, they found somebody who gave them love, attachment, that sense of comfort. And that place is not healthy, but what they are giving is a sense of attachment. Like, I'm taking care of you, I'm taking care of your needs. And in that attachment, imagine somebody, they know what they really want to do. Will they be able to come out of it? It'll be difficult for them. because this person is serving an emotional void in that. So it's very subjective when you talk about why people are not able to take stand when they know they want to do something. Because out of survival, there's so many things, layers to it. The best way is to reflect. What is this relationship serving me? Simple activity. What is this relationship serving me? What am I getting out of this person? Make a list. You'll be surprised to know these are the exactly same things that while growing up you were really deprived of and you did not get. Now, how to come out of that? Take one thing at a time. For example, I want to do something, and whenever I want to do something, I go and ask my partner to do it for me. You take a step that I'm going to do it on my own, do my research, do it on my own. So slowly, 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 when you become your own provider, at the same time, ask for help from a person who is healthy, you'll notice you'll be able to take your stuff. So that's the simplest way that you can come out of it and you'll have a space for yourself. For example, safety. If while growing up you really felt unsafe, maybe you saw some form of abuse while growing up. So the kids who saw a lot of physical and emotional abuse in their childhood while growing up, for them to trust somebody, it's difficult. What you see as a lack of trust, but as a therapist, what I see is a lack of safety. That how can they feel safe where they did not feel safe in their own home? So now they learn their relationship with safety. They reset their nervous system, they start practicing the breath work, they understand their traumas. That's how they build the safety, the definition of safety by them. Once they'll work on that, it'll be easier for them to take their own stand. But there's so many layers to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I always say that um, don't let a reel decide what needs to be done, because the person who's sitting on the other side of the table have no idea what you have been through. So
Yeah.
it's very subjective what we see online. It's really important to come back and reflect that does that work for me or it
Mhm.
does not? Because it's not the ultimate truth, right? It's their perspective. जैसे मैं अभी भी
That's
कुछ पे बोल रही हूँ, I'm saying something. It's something from my own experiences, perspective, and knowledge. Might not work for you and the people who are sitting across as well.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree. Today everything is so subjective out there, and with access to content becoming so easy,
Yeah.
uh, we are overwhelmed with the information overload that we have. That leads to emotion overload as well at
Mm.
times.
Mm.
We have so many, OTT platforms coming in, so many
Mm.
episodes coming out,
Mm.
which might reflect something in a very different manner. And
Mm.
we try to, replicate that in our own lives. We
Mm.
try to keep ourselves in the shoes of the protagonist. And then,
Yeah.
why is this not happening with me? It happened with her or him.
Yeah.
Why is the
Comparison.
same thing not happening with me? And that's where a lot of, I would say, arguments or negative emotions sort of seed in, and then they burst out often at times as uh, having different form of abuses coming in picture as well. And it's very different for everyone out there. Something I would like to understand is coming from a generational trauma front. We were discussing about
Yeah.
the parents need to do.
Yeah.
Now, for us, our generation is at a place where, yes, we have awareness.
Yeah.
The previous generation, basically our parents, didn't have that
Mm.
access at their, when they were in their 30s,
Yeah.
but they have it today.
Yeah.
Now, it's a very tricky space to be in. How do you really navigate them? Because at once it is said
Yeah.
that after you have reached a certain age, it is difficult to change.
Yeah.
And then, but now you have access to those tools.
Yeah.
So how do you really bridge these two things?
I think I assume you are a millennial, right?
Yeah.
I always say that millennials is oh my God, they are the in-betweens, right? We saw while growing up nothing like mental health. And now that we are in the late 20s or 30s, there's so much of information. So
Yes.
we are that transition age group that is going through this because we have seen our parents uh, while growing up all perfect. Everything is good. They were available for us. We never really thought that there's something called emotional unavailability, right? And now that you are in your 20s, you reflect, you're like, oh, they were not like emotionally unavailable. Yeah. So it's a
Yes.
tricky thing. And regarding parents, it all comes to the desire. It all comes back to it. I have clients who are in their 50s and 60s, parents who are working really well for their kids, for themselves, for a healthy home. There are clients who are in their 60s and they really don't want to. So it all comes back to the desire. If they don't have it, you can't force them. Then it's not their work. Then it's the work of a child to draw the boundary and reinforce it again and again, again and again and again. Because if it's unhealthy, uh, I think as a जैसे एक mother guilt होता है ना, the mother carries the guilt, the parent carries the guilt. Same way, even the son and the daughters, we carry some guilt. And one of the very common guilt is I see my mother suffering or I see my father suffering, and I know there are resources available. And I want to do my best. I know they can do better. I know they'll do. And you keep on doing, keep on doing. Nothing happens, but you bring a lot of exhaustion to yourself and a lot of pressure on this relationship. In that case, the best is do not do that because it really impacts the relationship. Then you will have to draw a boundary and you need to remind yourself that I'm also responsible for emerging a life, a household from my own self. Because if I'll keep my strings attached so much here, it will impact the life that I'm going to build. But how, at the same time, I can draw boundary with my parents, yet be loving and gracious to them, right? For example, if a mother has a habit of, let's say, trauma dumping means she went through a lot of things. She comes and just spill it out and she feels better about it. And there's no work that needs to be done. So that's called like me dumping my trauma onto somebody. It's a very uh, common scenario that we see in yeah, like old people that they come, they'll speak out everything, and when we'll say, Mama, you can do this, Papa, you can do this, and they're like, no, nothing has to be done. And then after 2 weeks, same trauma dumping comes. Yeah. In that scenario, what is really important for you to let your mother know, Mama, I really don't want to hear this. It really impacts my day. Okay. She'll keep on blabbering, Mama. She'll keep, Mama, I did this. To be very honest, I did this. Yeah. It took me time. And then over some years and years, you reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. But the one mistake that the kids tend to do is when they're reinforcing the boundary, they are not available for their parents. You need to understand boundary does not mean that you'll stop loving and caring. This is the concept. When we are angry with somebody, we stop loving that person.
Yeah.
And this is something also that we learn from our parents. That when we are angry, we do not do the basic things, the care, the concern. So that way it has to be maintained. If they need something, they want your help, they want your support, you give that. But there's this part that you draw a boundary. So try to understand yourself as a parent that if you draw a boundary, they'll feel like my child is avoiding me, abandoning me. But if you draw a boundary in particular one area, and but you are there, the love and exchange and the information is there, you're like, okay, no, he's not abandoning me. He's there for me. It's just this one thing that I will not cross. And to be honest, it takes time. It comes with a lot of guilt. It comes with tears. It comes with you feeling lonely. It comes with you asking yourself, why me only? Like, look at everybody's parents, they are there. And so it comes with a lot of those phases as well. But again, in the end, you'll have to remind yourself there's a life that builds out of you as well. Like you are the seed of a tree. So I
Yeah.
look at like that, and that really helps me to like draw boundaries.
Wow. And I was just gonna reflect upon this similar scenario from a different viewpoint. Now, a lot of times, parents try to live their dreams through their children.
Mm,
Whatever XYZ reasons they were not able to achieve something in their life, or they didn't have the resources. Now, they want their children to have those resources and walk on that path. A child might fail. Now, instead of being available for that child, they often draw that boundaries. Coming picture, they are angry at one point that you were not able to do it. But at the same time, again, as a child becomes unavailable, they also become unavailable for the children, for the child out
mm,
there, because that child needs guidance, that child needs
mm,
consoling to be
mm.
getting ready for the next, probably next
Yeah,
milestone.
yeah.
So, how does this whole scenario play around, with things happening all around? And that distance between a parent and a child increasing with every failure a child goes through.
Yeah, it's a very common case because uh, I always say everything is about the relation, right? Your relationship with anything, my relationship with the non-living things that are lying around as well. So when you say that failure create the distance between two relationships, it's not about the failure. It's about how these two people, and especially the one that you're talking about, the father defined the failure. So if a father is of a very fixed mindset that you're not supposed to fail, failures are bad. You should always do better and you should always do succeed. It's a very perfectionist behavior, right? And the perfectionism is a trauma response. How? When you did not succeeded, maybe उनके parents ने उनको काफी बोला और किया. So now that is being forwarded to the child. Two things, again, the age group divides. If the child is very young, and if the parent supports, then the child should have a safe space. Not in terms of friends, because even the friends might be going through something very similar. Maybe counseling helps so that there's a space that the child can go to and have a sense. But to be very honest, Pulkit, it becomes very difficult in cases where parents are not okay with counseling. They do not have a peer group or a support system. Then the child goes through a lot of a coping mechanism, which is usually of isolation.
Mhm.
That anything which is too much for a child to process, he'll go into his own bubble. He'll be quiet. In those scenarios, if you'll ask me, Divyanshi, what a child can do, if I'll talk to the child, only say one thing to a child, that I know you don't have your parents available. I know you don't have your friends. But one thing that you are access is internet. Go online and go through the journey of people who shared the similar journey as you.
Yeah.
Easy, because no counseling, parents are not supportive, friends are not there, then what else? Internet is always available to the kids. So now you can let the kid know that find out the people who have been through a similar journey as what you are going through. So maybe he'll look for people who have been, for example, I really like the story of Nike, this the founder of Nike. Yeah, the Shoe Dog book. I really like how he talks about his journey. So I'll suggest him go through, read, listen to the TED Talks. Why? Because that will help him to develop a mindset. What is that mindset? A growth mindset. So what he was passed on was a fixed mindset. But I'm not saying him look at your parents, what he has done to you, work on your trauma. No, all of that I'll not say to a child. Or I'll put a new seed of growth mindset. That once you understand that how the growth mindset work, the people who have been through a similar journey as you, surprisingly you'll have your own tools to take care what your father was doing to
Yeah.
you. You won't be needing anybody. But if somebody is capable and they feel like they have a parenting like that, then maybe a safe space that they can go to. And the similar thing that I told a child, similar thing I'll say to an adult. you know find communities of unconventional people. We are living in a world where it's so easier, the connectivity is so easier. Find
Mhm.
communities. Once you go in community, you'll realize that there's nothing wrong in you, because once you fail, and if your father comes and pinpoint that you have failed, there's a sense that there's something wrong with me. And you try to keep fixing that. For that relationship, you try keep fixing that something within you. But when you meet people who have been on a similar journey as you feel like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. Like we are two very different individuals. What he wanted was good, I think best of intention for me, but that somehow do not work for me. So you also don't develop anger or hatred relationship. It's something, it's a work that is built on the acceptance and you developing your own mindset.
Yeah. Um,
Mm.
but Divyanshi, you mentioned about going online, and
Mm.
more than the information, there's a lot of misinformation out
Misinformation. Yeah.
today. Now, it's not very easily accessible to walk. It's not very easy as well as it's not easily accessible to walk on the
Mm.
right. I won't say the right path,
Mm.
but the
Hmm.
path that's going to be guiding you. There's a
Hmm.
lot of miscreants available.
Hmm.
Now, often our solace becomes our friends who
Hmm.
are also going through something similar,
Hmm.
and they don't have the right influence, or they would
Yeah.
not influence in the right manner. They
Yeah.
will guide you, probably not guide you, but yes, they will tell you things which they have experienced, and
Hmm.
they're not the best of the things out there.
Yeah.
Now, your parents are unavailable at that time. You
Hmm.
get exposed to things which are too mature for your age,
Hmm.
and you just keep spiraling down
Yeah.
to a place where you're not aware what's happening.
Yeah.
And then you open up to your parents, and they're like passing on the responsibility to somebody else.
Yeah. You can't
They will
open up.
take you to a
Hmm.
counselor, or they will go and talk to your teachers in school. And again,
Hmm.
the teacher is also going through a similar thing. She will make
Yeah.
coffee in front of the whole class, and
Yeah.
that gets the child further down.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this sort of a thing?
I think the spiraling is a part of everybody's life, to be very honest. My question is here is what is it in us that is so scared of the spiraling? Why do we always feel like that life is supposed life should be like a linear journey? If
Mhm.
I'll pick anybody's from the crowd and if I'll get to know their story, they have been through the spiral.
That's true.
So as a therapist, I feel spiral is very, very important. It's very, very important. Because if I'll ask you that what are you grateful for in your life? Where do you think where you are right now? What is the part of your life that really majorly contributes to where you are right now? If you'll try to tap into that, you'll notice that Divyanshi, I think it was the spiral. It was the spiral. So I think you can give resources to a child, but you can't really take control whether they go through the spiral or not. Because spiral is something which is very secret and very internal in this age group, you know. It's something that you won't even get to know. And I'm pretty sure when went through the spiral, nobody around us was really aware that we went through the spiral. Even we were not aware that this was a
Yep.
spiral.
Yep.
Now that
Yep.
we look back, so I feel like when you say that what can we do, we can give them the resources in terms of the counselor, the best of resources online, but we can't really take care whether they will go through the spiral or not. I think it's their journey. And there's something in us which really don't want to go through people what we have gone through. But I think that that's little selfish of us. Like,
Uh, but at the same time, I agree with whatever you're saying. See,
mm,
failures are what helps us evolve. It
mm,
gives us more insights about we as a human being.
mm,
But that linear journey, or that continuous up, the up linear, that curve that
mm,
has to be there for our lives, it's an expectation set by our parents only for us.
yeah,
They, as a parent, are right at their place. They want the
yeah,
best of the things for their, kids or children.
yeah,
But at that time, being a parent, they forget that they had been through it.
mm,
And how much ever they try, they cannot safeguard their children from the lessons of the life.
yeah,
And if they safeguard the child too much from those lessons, how is that child gonna live after the parents are not there? That's
yeah.
the
It'll be
harsh
a
truth
lot of,
we all
yeah,
have to go through.
yeah,
And I have seen a lot of friends, a very simple thing, they're not able to cross a road.
yeah,
They always say, "Okay, my father holds my hand, or my mother is always there
mm,
to hold my hand."
mm,
Have to cross the road on your own at one point or the other in your life.
yeah.
How is that gonna happen?
Yeah, what you're talking about is actually a parenting style which is authoritative. So there are basically four parenting style. Every parent follows all the parenting style depending on a situation. So first is authoritarian. So I did a little thesis on this when I was in my master. The kind of parenting impacts the life satisfaction, and you'll be surprised to know the people who are into the who have been through a authoritarian parenting style, the life satisfaction was the highest. Yeah. Now, what is authoritarian? Authoritarian, where they are strict. At the same time, they have the space for negotiation. Let's say when they say you're not supposed to do this, you know the reason why you're not supposed to do this. Simple. Okay. Then comes the authoritative. You don't, there's no room for negotiation. Nahi karna hai, matlab you're not supposed to do it, it means you're not supposed to do it. If I ask why, shut up. I'm bigger than you, I'm saying. So that's authoritative parenting style. Very dominance. No, there's no voice for the child to even express or say a few things. If the child is saying it, being neglecting. Then comes the permissive. Permissive means very easygoing. Like, for example, there are rules, but if the kids are not following the rule, nothing will be done. So these kids, they have difficulty, no doubt, they have good self-esteem because they were allowed to explore. But these are the kids who have problem with emotional regulation because whenever there'll be discipline or things that needs to be done, they're not able to cope up or do things. Then comes the fourth parenting style, neglect. Very common one that is being practiced, these days. Uh, Child, they don't have a sense that parents are there. Maybe they are working. Even if they're not working, they are not there because they are already going through something on their own, but they have like 2 to 3 kids where all the kids are feeling neglected. These are the kids who have a lot of self-esteem. Like they don't know what to do. Their self-esteem is fulfilled by the love that you get from the outside. So what a parenting style that you are talking about is the authoritative parenting style. The parents are always on their head that you'll have to do this, you will have to do this. Once you understand which parenting style you come from, then you understand that what are the struggles and what are your strengths, but what are your weaknesses that you are going through. Once you understand these are your weaknesses, then it's easier for you to work. That I know I come from this parenting style, and then you question that going forward, if I want to have kids or if I want to raise a family, what parenting style do I want? Let's say I want authoritarian, but I have been through it authoritative. I want authoritarian, but the way I deal with situation and small kids and people around you, I'm very authoritative. Then the struggle comes. Then they understand about themselves that these people have a lot of control freaks.
Mhm.
And I always say we are the generation of control freaks. Anything that goes out of our hand and we are not able to do anything, there's so much of anxiety and panic attack that we go through. So I
That's
hope that
yeah,
answers your question that how can one navigate?
surely. Um, Probably what I'm gonna be putting out is sort of a utopia in today's world.
Mm,
But why communication is such a luxury between
mhm,
the parent-child relationship?
mm.
No, neither the parent is perfect nor the child is perfect. Why
Yeah,
can't both accept them as is
yeah,
and be the guiding force for each other? Why is that
mm,
level of conversation so, in dearth in most of the homes? I've seen very less homes out here in India, wherever I've been able to travel,
yeah,
where a child saying something to the father or mother is respectfully accepted, and then a response is coming instead of a reaction. It's
yeah,
mostly a reaction coming in picture, and vice versa is also true.
yeah,
That void of communication leads to a lot of misunderstandings, and then the whole spiral that we have been referring to in
yeah,
different perspectives gets into
yeah,
existence. So
yeah.
why communication is such in dearth out there in the society we live?
In terms of any communication, particularly about parents or child, it's simple. Ego. If I'll say in a very simple word, it's ego. What is ego? Egocentric behaviors, where I feel the way I operate, the way I do things, it's the only way of getting the things done. Parents have the same thing. What I'm saying, I have experience. I've heard a lot of parents saying that I have seen life more than you. Even sometimes my parents are like, I have seen life more than you. And sometimes I feel like saying them, I understand that you have seen life more than me. But being in my profession, I think मैंने आपसे ज्यादा लोगों का inner world जाना है,
Yeah.
you know. But there are few things that you can say and you cannot. So everything comes back to the ego. That what I believe is the ultimate truth. What I believe is the only perspective. What I say is the only way the truth can shape. If we operate like that in egocentric behavior, not in parent or child relationship, in any relationship, the clashes are going to happen. So the best way is even for a child also. When a child says he, I know how today's generation work. I know what my friends are trying to say. I know what I want to do. You know, that also comes from a lot of egocentric behavior. Two people operating from ego, it is supposed to clash. There'll be no space for the growth. Because if ego could talk, ego is saying, let me hold the ground. I
Yes.
can't lose my ground. And anybody who triggers your ego or your egocentric behavior, it's very natural, right? If you have a wound and somebody comes and pick on that wound, you'll be like, don't do it. Similarly, when somebody comes and put your ego on check, you don't like it, you react. You protect yourself. You protect your belief system. So if you're too much attached to your beliefs and you feel like these are the only way that it operates, then any relationship, you do not leave a place for growth. So it's really important, like very simple exercises. What did I say? What did you hear? What is it that you really wanted to say? How can we make it better? Simple one. Maybe my father said something to me. What is it that I perceived? What is it that he really wanted to say? And what is it that we can do it better in this communication? So you create the room space for everybody's perspective and you understand what really works for you.
Understood. Understood.
Mm.
Mm, you know, I believe to a certain degree, having ego is also good. Or you can
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong in saying this.
yeah,
It brings in the sense of self, you know, giving that grounding to our existence.
yeah.
So if you can, elaborate a bit why it is important for personal growth and the emotional stability out there.
For ego,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really important because in psychology, it says that ego protects you, no doubt. When you know who you are, when you know what your core is, when you know what your strengths are, then people are coming and trying to shake your core or change your core. Then that's when the ego protects because it knows that this is my ground, right? In that case, ego is very healthy. But you also need to understand that what you are talking about, it's actually your center, your core, or it's something that is always keep changing or evolving and you are very attached to it. For example, our preferences, our like and dislikes, our beliefs, our perception. If ego is operating from these, we are very fixated here, then we'll have problem. Because if I'll ask you what your likes and dislikes were 2 years back, what your dislikes are right now, what your dislikes and likes are will be evolving, right? Changing. So, and if we'll attach ourselves to something which is the nature is the transition, it's always changing, then we'll struggle. So it's good when you know there are cores of you. Like, for example, I know that I'm a compassionate being, I'm a kind being. That does not change over a period of time, right?
Yeah.
If I'm very particular about that and then I have conflicts, that's fine. But if I'm very attached to something that the way I see it, I was like, this is the only way I see it, then I will have challenges. So it's really important to know when ego is protecting you and when ego is creating the conflicts. So it's a very thin line that people usually do not understand. That how can I use ego to protect myself and how can I use ego to understand myself better?
Understood.
Mm.
Uh, just a follow-up question before I move on to my main next question. In a lot of relationships, be it uh, a couple out there, be it a parent, child, or friends, a lot of times somebody who has a not very strengthened sense of self, they're
Mm.
often introverts. They are always not saying too much out of things, but they
Mm.
always have a telltale signs out there. And the
Mm.
wiser ones, more strengthened ones, will
Mm.
some way or the other keep exploiting them, keep badgering them. They will continuously keep hitting on their
Mm.
confidence levels and everything.
Mm.
And that then they the weaker one reacts. It's not
Mm.
usually a response, but it's always a
Yeah,
reaction coming out
it's
uh,
always, yeah.
when they reach the threshold.
Yeah.
They are being made that these people keep shouting, they don't know how to behave, they
Mm.
keep crying, XYZ, and all the labels are put on them.
Yeah. The people who are like, if you,
Yes.
yeah.
So how can, how can they really navigate this through people who have weaker sense of self or weaker self-esteems? And it's also because of the different experiences or continuous, questions that have been put on them of
Mm.
for their actions, whether it was good or bad. So how can they really overcome this? Because when the telltale signs were there, you didn't, observe them. You were continuously ignorant. You were living in
Mm.
your own oblivion. And the day they
Mm.
burst out like a volcano, you are just putting all the blames on them.
Yeah.
So how does
Mm.
these things, really
Yeah.
could be or should be navigated?
It's a very beautiful question, to be very honest. It's a very beautiful question. And I feel like it's very subjective, to be honest,
Yeah.
because when we talk about the self-esteem or sense of self, it's very different for different people and how it is formed. Maybe for one person, the sense of self really comes from the when they take their stand. There's some people whose sense of self does not come from like reacting, taking the stand, because they know that who they are and they feel like I need to do like a tortoise voice walk, and this is where I am, and I like it. So I believe that when people struggle through something like that, it's subjective, and the only question that really matters is why my self-esteem is low. Only thing. And the people, if you'll ask me, the people who react and the people who responds, okay, there is a category. The people who always react, 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 are the people there are chances that maybe self-work is not being done. That's why they are getting triggered. Yeah. Every trigger is an opportunity for you to explore your being. You'll only get triggered when there's something that is not right. Maybe they are on their journey. But reaction always comes from the heightened nervous system, you know, and the response comes from a unheightened, the relaxed nervous system. Okay, so let's say there are two category of people. Their sense of self is low. One is reacting, and one is not reacting. The reacting can come from a place where they're not doing. They feel like they are doing it. Let's say, but there's a lack of self work. So it's very subconscious shadow work. Actually, that's what we say. People don't like it because it really put them on the front that the reason you are reacting because there's something unsettled within you, something like that, and you're not working for it. And the people who respond, they know that subconsciously there is some work that is going on to take care of my self-esteem, the self-worth. First thing. The second thing that they can do is understand what part of their sense of self is low. There are different layers to the sense of self, right? The way I look at myself, is that part low? My relationship with myself, is that something that needs to be worked? Or my perspective about the world, they're very distorted ones. That's why my sense of self is low. Then the sense of self low is fear of failures. The sense of self is low because fear of abandonment. Maybe I was not there, I was not being loved. So first you need to understand where the low sense of self is coming from. Is it coming from the perfectionism whenever I'm not able to achieve something and I feel very low of myself? And that decides the course of action. So it's difficult, to be honest, to see something like that on social media, how to work on your self esteem. It doesn't work like that. First, you need to trace which part of yourself is distorted because there's so many parts of the self. Once you understand, it'll be easier for you to do the work. For example, अगर किसी का sense of self decision making is very low, okay, and you give them a task, a problem, and they'll solve a problem, it'll be taken care of. But with the same person, if their sense of self is coming from they have low decision making, let's say, but I'm giving them something which is not related to that, it'll not do the exact work that what the previous task did. So it's also important for them to understand. Once they'll do the self work, you'll notice people coming and bashing them, and they're taking care, they are literally taking stand for themselves. But that comes from that space.
So what would be the first step for somebody, starting their self-work, or how could somebody really identify that I need self-work? What's that journey like?
Trigger. What are the things that makes my heartbeat go fast? What are the things where I feel anxious? What are the things where I see myself reacting within a second? What are the things where I react and I feel that I'm really guilty of? Guilt is a beautiful way to reflect your self worth. Places where you feel guilty of. What are the places where you feel jealous? I love this emotion called jealousy because it says a lot about you. For example, I don't feel jealous of a pilot. I don't feel envy of a pilot. Why? Because I don't want to be that. You only feel jealous for the things that you really want for yourself and you know you're not getting it. So,
Yeah.
jealousy is a very beautiful emotion that can help you to identify what you want. So, I think trigger is the best way, in general, a simple umbrella to understand where the self work needs to be done. It's
Understood.
simple. Bucket is there. And you'll ask me which part of the bucket needs to be repaired. I'll say simple, fill the water and see where the water is leaking from.
Yeah.
So the leaking represents the trigger. So you know this is the part that needs to be worked on.
Understood. Understood.
Mm.
Divyanshi, would you be comfortable in sharing any personal experience, where you felt disconnected and then you regained your sense of self back? How was that journey? If you can share with our listeners.
Yeah, it's personal, but I can share. I remember now that I look back, I feel like I have always been a really pampered child. Mama, Papa wanted a baby girl. I was born after like when my mother was in her 40s and they got a baby girl. So I was always been like a really pampered child. But again, emotionally, if you'll ask me, parents had no idea na, how to be available for the kids emotionally. It's not their mistake. It's a small place. But they will always have been there for me. Okay. And while growing up, I I remember I went to a boarding school and I had a friend there, and I was very attached to that friend of mine, like very, very attached. Okay. Now that I reflect back on the relationship, it was just a void, you know, the void of emotions, the void of connection, the void of somebody is there no matter what. That attachment. Now that I reflect back, it was a lot of attachment. And it wasn't a healthy friendship, and I lost myself completely. There was no sense of self, there was no psychology, there was nothing. It was really, really toxic friendship that I was in. And I had no idea that it was toxic, like, now that I reflect on. But I always say to people that if you don't know that whether this is healthy or unhealthy, leave that, try to navigate that later on, but start asking yourself, how can I take care of myself? Simplest way. So my journey of start, if you'll ask me where all of this started from, I started learning psychology and yoga. And I went to yoga just to lose some weight. Gym was far. The yoga teacher was next to the building. So I thought Noida is not safe. Let me go to a building which is next to me. And I started going to yoga. And once you develop a relationship with your body, I always say mind body connection changes the game. It just don't care you are in toxic place. Don't care whether you'll be come out of it. Don't care you are in survival mode. Leave everything aside. Leave it. Let those things be the byproduct of you working on yourself. And once you understand your body, you start knowing how to breathe properly, something which is not taught. Like, I really want people to learn about the mind body connection. Okay. I started doing yoga, and yoga really changed me. And then psychology, it really changed my perspective. And the more I started respecting my body, I noticed the more you give respect to yourself in your day to day actions, the more you show up for yourself in your day to day action, you go to the unhealthy relationship and you're like, I'm used to so much of the respect. This is so disrespectful. And you don't. Surprisingly, you feel like this is not aligning with the work that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's same as, let's say I'm in a meditation room the whole day. I'm listening to music. I'm such in a nice nervous system. My nervous system is relaxed. Imagine, will I be okay in going to a place which is full of loud music after the 6 hours of being in a slow room? No. Automatically, my nervous system will not accept that. I'll not have to do anything. It'll not accept. But
Agree.
if I'll ask you to do something opposite, where I'm in a loud room and you are telling me, come out of the loud room. It's not healthy for you. Come out of the loud room. It's not healthy for your nervous system. I'm like, shut up. I'm enjoying you.
Yeah.
So let's be smart. I always say, let's be smart in terms of mental health. Let's not remove something that doesn't work for you. Let's introduce something new, 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 new. And you'll not notice how this thing got like automatically out of your life. So I
Mm,
think,
Thanks a lot for sharing this. And I echo with you somewhere on this.
Mm.
It's really important to know the self, what
Yeah,
really works for you and what really doesn't work for you.
yeah.
I
Can I add one thing?
sure,
Sorry.
sure, why not?
To be honest, in that journey, you don't know the self. You're not doing anything for the self.
Agreed.
Yeah. Somehow when you realize, oh, like, oh, it was the self which was getting developed. But in that moment, when I was in college, there was no concept of self. If somebody would have come to me, do you want to go to yoga classes? It will help you to develop yourself. I would have run away. So
Yeah,
maybe something that you like try to just experiment and be curious. Let
that's
me
true.
just go. Let me just go. Let's see what I like and what's
Yeah,
cool here. And yourself will be taken care of.
agreed, agreed, agreed.
Yeah.
And the mind body soul connection, that you talked about, it really helps. It speaks to you. Uh,
Yeah.
Even in my college, I experimented a lot of things. And
Hmm.
it was just that my body said that it's not liking it.
Yeah.
And
It's not.
I'm thankfully that I didn't get into those things.
Yeah.
And today I am, sort of, I I'm a social drinker at times. I go for that.
Hmm.
But I have seen friends who are totally, they want to drink every day. And for them, party means just drinking, or party means just smoking out there.
Yeah.
They would be like, okay, if I reach out to them, let's go out somewhere. They're like, चल ठीक है, बैठते हैं आज करते हैं.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want that. And that's where I
Yeah.
stopped reaching out to those friends altogether because my body really doesn't feel good after that.
Good
Probably
after
for
that.
that 30 minutes or 45 minutes, there's a high coming in, but my
Yeah.
body doesn't really feel good the next day or the 2 days after that. And I got to know about it go after going through it. Until
Hmm.
and unless, because I'm a very curious soul, I love to experiment
Hmm.
things. Till the time I didn't do it, I was like, what happens? What happens? Why are people so, fascinated about it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tried it and I realized my body is not suited for it. My body
Hmm.
does not really respond the way I want it to respond, or the place where I feel comfortable. I am myself.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I have started maintaining distance from, alcohol
Wow.
and all those things. I don't go for that. But yes, in metro cities, there are very less people who don't want these things. Like the sales of
It's
liquor
yeah,
in
yeah,
during the festive seasons. Again, we are approaching Diwali. Last year, it was more than 100 crores just in Gurgaon, the sale of
yeah,
liquor. Let's see what the figures are going to be touching this year. And every Diwali party, every evening party, at times, for business meetings, we have to go to pubs and all those things. Monday evenings, they're full.
yeah,
You're like questioning yourself, it's Monday, it's just the start of the week. How come
yeah,
this, bar could be full or this place could be full of people having
yeah.
drinks? So it's very difficult. Like, it becomes a coping mechanism again for a lot of people coming out of a lot
Escape.
of yes, escape from whatever things are
Yeah,
happening in their life, whatever spirals are happening in their life. And it's a very different path to navigate. I don't know how to articulate things coming to my mind over here. uh,
yeah,
but it's a very challenging space to be in. Instead of,
yeah,
again, brings me to my same point out there, instead of talking about it, we want to escape from it. And again, escape is also what you just get, probably you forget it for an hour or so after you are high,
yeah,
but the next day the same triggers are happening again and
yeah,
you don't know,
exactly.
you're not really getting out of it, but you're just switching it off for a certain period of time.
Yeah. I think the intention really matters. It has never been about that one thing is bad or good. For example, the party, the bar, the alcohol. It's never about that it's bad. The intention that you access something with. So if my intention when I'm getting access to alcohol is to forget, fine. But later on, do you address it?
Yeah,
All good, no problem. Then your relationship with alcohol will not take a control over you. I'm pretty sure if this is the intention. But if our intention is to just suppress and not address it later on, then that becomes the depression. In that case, it is very, try to look at it as a society. When the places for escape are filled, it shows as a society, where are we heading? Yeah. So I think it's always about the place. And when you talk about Divyanshi, it's so navigate as an individual who do not connect with it. I truly resonate with you because I feel like don't I have the capacity to build friendships now? Is it so? Does that demand so much out of me? And then the people that you look at and you felt the sense of familiarity, the comfort. Now you look at those same faces and you don't find the sense of comfort and familiarity transition. When
That's
you
true.
are, and it brings the sense of, to be honest, a loneliness as well. Brief period, you feel like being alone, or you feel like you're alone, or you feel like you're lonely. But what's the good thing that comes? You remind yourself that I think this is the path, what it looks like. It's not all the way it is shown on social media that you are healing, you are in your healing era, I have healed. All of that. It's
Yep.
scary. It's scary like that. And it's not like you have learned to say no, so every time you'll say no. There'll be few yes also, they'll be followed by guilt. There'll be few no's who will be followed by guilt. And then you'll sit with and navigate those guilt.
Yep. That's
You
true.
know,
Yep.
have I become too rigid of I don't want to do certain things? Should I have
Yeah.
flexible mindset? But I tried being flexible and it just takes so much energy out of me. So is it good? So there's a lot of navigation that you personally go through. And I think that's better. I think that's the
Yeah.
part of it. That's the
Yes,
part
yes, I
of it.
totally agree. Again, it's all about trying and knowing what you want. Nobody knows, the right or the wrong. It's a
Yeah,
very subjective space to
very
be in. It's
subjective.
like
Yeah,
yin yang out there.
yeah,
Uh, but if you are happy, you are contented within yourself, I
yeah.
guess that should suffice it. That should be the end of, yes or no or the guilt and all those
Mm,
factors surrounding it.
yeah, yeah.
If you feel contented, you are satisfied, you are not feeling that void within, I guess that answers everything. Because at
Mm,
times, I usually sleep by 9 and wake up at 4.
mm,
I guess
mm.
podcast listeners would know this by now, my regular schedule.
Yeah. Yeah,
But when I go out at parties now, a lot of times I avoid parties because I have to sleep by 9,
I
and
can.
I cannot wake up after till late. I had migraine issues since my childhood,
Mm,
and that's something that's my go-to solace. Like with
mm,
this lifestyle coming picture, my
yeah,
migraine episodes have reduced a lot. So I
yeah.
prefer this. But people like Pulkit, you are boring. You don't know how to enjoy life. At
I
times,
resonate.
it does impact you. It gets you to question your decisions or the routine you have built.
Mm.
But then once you get that comfort back, you're like, okay, I'm fine where I am.
Yeah,
Enjoy the way you want your life to be.
yeah. And we were talking about ego, and I think that's a point where in between, I'll not say in between, it always finds its own way to us, where we separate ourselves from people, and there are no opinions, there are judgments that comes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very tricky space that we should navigate. And I myself found myself judging a lot of people a year back. Then it was, I think, it was really guilty for me, like putting myself in a place where I was aware that I'm judging people on the basis of what they are drinking, how they are spending, at what time they are sleeping. Then it's a journey. It's a journey. When I realized that I'm coming from the place of a lot of ego and judgments, then I made myself sit that, it's not about right and wrong. It's about what works for you. So
Yeah.
now I think I'm working on it's a still a process. I'm working on now I'm aware when I'm judging and I withdraw myself from the judgment. Even in the moment where my conscience wants to make a judgment, I tell myself, I see a judgment coming, Divyanshi, but let's not include yourself with it. Maybe just be quiet. Be quiet. That's the simple step that you can start from. But yeah, it's a space that comes. When we start working on ourselves, the judgment and the ego, it comes on the way and it separates you from the people. And that's not healthy. I think that's not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dipansha, with everything we have discussed so far, something that really comes and I guess was brought up in the very first, point of conversation was fear. So can you define what exactly is fear and what are different forms of fear you have encountered in your practice?
Very simple. Fear only comes from the memory. Simplest way to understand fear. The only way you can fear from something when you have a memory in your conscious or subconscious mind towards it. For example, there was an experiment done with memory and fear. Let's say I give a lizard or a snake to a child, very chota bacha, okay? He'll not be afraid of that, right? How he becomes an afraid when he is an adult? Because he has memories, maybe memories in not terms of him encountering, but maybe the parents saying, "Oh, the snake will bite you," or it's poisonous. So what's the memory? Memory is the parent reminding me that this is. So if I say that you are fearful about something, it means there is a memory that you did not sit with, that you did not understand. The best way to take care of fear is to understand. It is said, right? What can be understood, like what is understood, cannot be feared. So
Yeah,
if you're fearful about something, sit with it. Where is the fear coming from? What am I fearful about? Which memory leaded me to have these thoughts, which resulted to me experiencing this fear? What is my brain creating scenarios? Because fear is an emotion that comes from the past but impacts your future and takes you away from your present, if I can put it in this way.
yeah,
So there's a memory that creates some thoughts, the scenarios, the worst case scenarios, and your mind goes in that worst case scenarios, and you go so much away from the present, and you feel very anxious and fearful. So the simplest way, understand your roots, where it comes from, understand the scenarios that it is creating, and ask yourself, what are the worst case scenarios? क्या ही हो सकता है ज्यादा से ज्यादा?
yeah,
Okay, if this happens, then what happens? If this happens, then what happens? So you do this technique of then what, then what, then what? Is it the end of the world? Then what? And you navigate. So once you understand these two, you'll notice you're coming back to the present again. This is
and
something that I take care of my fears. I'm not able to do that in terms of lizards. I'm very scared of them. I think that's phobia. When somebody do any process with me and they like teachers or anyway, think of a fear. We are going to work on a fear. I can't think of fears. All I think of is lizard and okay. Still working on that.
related to that, even my sister has a fear of lizards. So my niece, and whenever she comes home, and if there's a lizard by chance, she will
Yeah.
not enter the room. And me and my
No.
niece are always making fun of her.
Yeah. But I think Pulkit, the reason I always say I need to work on it because I really like nature, forest. Imagine I go to Oroville and I say that there's lizard in my room. One time the lady, she said, listen, if you don't want lizard, go back to your cities. You have come to their home.
That's true.
At her. So I think that's the reason I really want to work on my lizard phobia.
Like,
Mm.
Um, Divyanshi, one of the biggest fear we all humans live with is fear of failure. And that's stops us from taking a lot of decisions as well. Like I will share my own personal experience with the whatever failures happened in last 4 years with the journey of Anya Wellness and in my personal journey. It has stopped me from taking a lot of decisions. I am planning the next step, how to evolve Anya on its journey. And it's the fear of those failures in the past that is stopping me to take that step. So,
Mm.
and I believe it's for a lot of people who are aspiring entrepreneurs out there, or even people who have made it big. They know now, though, okay, we have reached a comfortable space. We are making X number of percentage of profit every month, month on month growth, or year on growth. They stop experimenting. So, what's this phenomena, and is there a way to evolve out of it?
First, we'll talk about what is it, then we'll talk about the practical ways and the easiest way to come out of it. When you say that person is having a fear of failure, on the surface, it sounds like a fear of failure. But if you'll try to tap into the layers of it, it's actually about me fearing about that the personality that I would like the world to perceive about me will not be met. Yeah. So there's these different layers of you that you really would like to believe that this is what you are. But
Yeah.
surprisingly, at this moment, you are not that. So the way you want to be shown as to the world and the way you are, they do not align. So you are not in touch with yourself, your strengths. You only talk about the light. You are not in touch with your shadows. Once you are in touch with their shadows, when I say shadows, what are your shortcomings? What are the things that you wouldn't want the world to see? What are the things about you that you're really not comfortable to sit with? These are your shadows. When person is not in touch with their shadows, they'll be afraid that what if the world gets to know the shadow? And the failure is one of the way that the world gets to know about their shadow. So it's natural, they'll fear about it. And we call it the fear of failure. If you'll talk in terms of business, there's a way that I would like the world to perceive me as a businessman. But you need to understand, as a businessman, there are so many strengths and the weaknesses. This is a human nature, right? This is what it is. It has never been like a person who is always perfect. Where does that come from? It comes from movies. To be honest, it also comes from the way different scriptures were narrated to us. For example, uh, I'll go back to Mahabharata. We all are aware about Arjuna, right? Through the angle, the Mahabharata, we have heard about the angle of Arjuna. But now, when I read the Mahabharata through the perspective of Draupadi recently, I realized that there were so many shortcomings even with him. So I think we have this obsession of putting people on a pedestal where they are perfect. Every god and goddess is just perfect. We have always seen the light every time the light was shown to us. Even on social media, the light is shown to us. Through the movies, the light is shown to us. Hero is the hero, he's always hero. So we as a society are very obsessed with seeing the light. We forget what really is important is the shadow. Yeah. So the way you will be more in touch with the shadow, the more like a human you'll treat yourself. The more human you'll treat yourself, you'll not be afraid of your failures because these are your shadows. So you're like, oh, I'm made up of head and tail both, just as a coin.
Yeah.
Then you will not be that afraid. Your relationship with failure will start changing and evolving. And surprisingly, your relationship will become so better with people because they'll be so open about their failures. The one of the
Mm.
way that you can be comfortable with failures is talk to your family, your loved ones about each other's shortcomings and failures. Accept. Let your shadow part also play around in your day-to-day life, then your light.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the one part to understand the fear of failure, like as a concept of light and shadow. Now, how to work with it? What can we do? Take two examples. First person did something, failed at it, never tried again. Second person failed at it and built something big. What's the difference? Where do you think?
Probably the second person kept on trying.
Yeah, but what really made him kept on trying? That's a click, right? That everybody knows that we'll have to keep doing, keep doing. That's something that we have learned while we are growing up. But what was it really that helped him to go move forward?
No idea.
Yeah, it's a very nice thing that I always do. Make like few chits, like a different card size chits. Write down every failure that you have been through. Put it on the left hand side. It's a nice activity. And then write down the strengths of you on few chits. Okay. There are two ways. So one you have chits of failure. The one you have your strengths ka chits. Okay. Now go back to each failure. Think about it and ask yourself, what did I learn out of it? Definitely there was something that I learned out of this. Yeah? Turn it around and put it there. Do it with everything. Now you have chits of failure, teacher, things that you have learned from them, and then your strengths. Now the most beautiful part is turn this chits around. Like all the chits, what you have learned and your strengths. Now do match of the following. You'll be surprised to know that the strengths that you look at, if you try to trace them back somewhere or the other, they come from a shadow or a failure. And that's how your relationship with failure will evolve.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful activity that even I like to do. Sometimes when I'm like, I don't like this part of me, or even I like to do it with trauma as well, to be very honest, Pulkit. Sit with the trauma and trying to navigate. Because of this, what happened? I remember because of this, I became I became a good listener, like a compassionate being. How this compassion helped me. This compassion helped me to know that I think I can do therapy. All of this, all the thing I go back and trace. I'm very particular about sleep. Like I'm very particular, and I know when people say that I'm not able to sleep in my therapy sessions, the first thing that I work on is sleep. If I trace back, why do I do that? Because I exactly know when you don't get good sleep, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'll try to notice that strength of mine, it goes back to those nights where I felt that I'm not able to sleep. Yeah.
Amazing. For
Yeah.
me, often writing helps me a lot. So
Mm.
last year, I went through a very traumatic experience in my personal life.
Mm.
And for the first time, it happened that when I was driving my car, I started missing turns because I was so engrossed in thinking about that episode again and again in my mind.
Yeah.
And the third time I missed it, I was like, okay, I'm done with it. I sat down, I wrote the whole episode in two chapters. I'm planning to get all the things out now because at times it still bothers me. So I'm
Yeah.
planning to put it out. I've sort of converted into a story on my Medium channel out there.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I'm putting it out. And the more I write about it, the more free I feel, the
Yeah.
more, light I feel in my head that, okay, it has gone out. And
Yeah.
at one place, it was about getting the person who got me into that trauma to realize what
Mm.
I've gone through or, what they have instilled on me. Now it's all about just letting things out and not worrying about whether they get to know about it or not.
Yeah.
I'm far away
Yeah.
from it. It's just that I want to be free of
Mm.
those thoughts from my own mind and my that complete procrastination or introspection things that are happening. So I just
Yeah.
want to free myself from that.
You are getting in touch with your shadows, what you are actually doing.
Yeah.
So the things that the suffering is one of the secret shadow. We really don't want to world to know about us after. Why? There's an image. Happy go lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything is sorted.
Yes, yes, yes.
So when you were able to put your shadow out there, you notice that it does not, it's a part of you.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing actually.
Amazing. Amazing. Wasn't aware of
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, so Divyanshi, the final thing I would like to ask you is how fear often, manifests for different individuals,
Mm.
and how can these individuals break these chains of manifestation that they often, keep wearing as a sign of glamour, or,
Mm.
no, they just feel good about it that we have so much of things, but somewhere or the other they need
Mm.
self-work and sense of purpose out there.
I think when you say that, how can one come out of the fear? Can you repeat your question once more so that I can understand better?
Sure, sure. Often the fear manifests for a lot of people, and it's for many individuals out there, it's often, they just keep within themselves. They are not letting
Mm.
it out. And at times it becomes a glorification for them of their fears and their sufferings.
Sufferings, yeah, people like
Uh,
that.
like you talked about trauma dumping in the, starting of the
Mm.
conversation, that I have been through this, you don't know what I
Mm.
have been through. Instead
Mm.
of like the usual Delhi lingo, it
Mm.
comes to you don't know what I have been through.
Mm.
So, and what I personally believe is everybody on this earth has something or the other happening in their lives
Yeah,
we have no idea about.
we have no idea.
So,
Yeah,
and everybody has a different response mechanism to it.
yeah.
So we cannot be always in a continuous fight to, show our suffering to be the bigger of
Mm.
winning that battle. I don't know. I've seen a lot of people always in a continuous effort to win the battles of having the, more suffering out there,
Mm.
of being the
Yeah,
most person who has suffered the most. So,
victim.
yeah, being the victim out there. So
Yeah.
how can people really, move out of this, and how it is really manifested in certain forms, or how can people identify it?
Mm. I think fear, when I say about fear, understand your nervous system is on fight and flight response. When your nervous system is We all go through the fight and flight, but we come back to a rest and digest. So think about a nervous system when it is continuously, subconsciously on fight and flight response. The cortisol is high. When the cortisol is high, you are heightened state. Imagine there's a fire extinguisher came, yeah, and you're saying you're hungry. Will you take care of somebody who is hungry or will you take care of the fire?
We'll take care of our own fire.
Exactly. Similarly, a nervous system, when we are on fight and flight response, will not prioritize healing. It is need to cater to that fight and flight. Yeah. Fight and flight is an alarm for a body that sends a signal to a nervous system that release the hormones, the cortisol and the adrenaline to take care of it. Yeah. So body sends the blood. If you notice you are in your fight and flight response, let's say the lion is coming, the best example. कभी दौड़े भी नहीं होगे ना फिर भी you will run so fast. Why? Because our body reacts in a very beautiful way. Whenever the fight and flight is activate, it will not take care of any other things which is needs to be taken care of. It sends the blood away from our body towards a limb, towards the legs. That's why the activity is so much. When the people are fearful, you'll notice them moving. There's so much of movement their body brings, right?
Yeah.
And where there's so much of blood that goes away from your body, imagine the kind of distress that your body and your organs are continuously in because it's coping up with something that has been activated. So if a house is on fire, it's fine for a few hours. But what if it's on fire for days? There'll be so many things nearby, that resources and everything that needs to be taken care of. Think something like it's corona or something like fight and flight game. There are so many things that were being suffered, right? Similarly, if you are on a fear for a long period of your time, it can manifest as different diseases. It impacts your kidney because that's your adrenaline gland. This. Do you know kidney and fear, they are very, very related? It really impacts your organ system, the functioning of organ system, the proper oxygen supply to your organ system. So I'm just talking in short because in a longer run, it really impacts the functions of your body, results in all the lifestyle diseases and the disorders that people talk about. People feel, oh, it's physical. No, it's not physical. It came from some of the unmanaged emotions that you had for a long period of your time, and your body was continuously into the fight and flight. Now, Divyanshi, how to come out of it? From fight and flight to rest and digest. How do you come out of it? Mind body connection that we did talk about. Any form of movement, any form of movement. It's not about yoga, it's about whatever you like. But the conscious movement. I say, people, do you do any form of movement? Yeah, I go to my office, so I walk in the metro. And I was like, no, that's something that is important. That's not conscious movement. Conscious movement is important. What is conscious movement? I'm moving to take care of my any of the bodies, the physical, mental, or emotional body. It feels better. Okay. Then your breath work. Breath works play an important role for you to come out of the fear. The technique that we talked about, worst case scenarios, then what? Then what? Then what? Takes you out of the fear state. Yeah. Recently, people use a lot of tapping,
Yeah.
shaking body. When you shake your body, when you jump, the trampoline jumping is very famous these days. It really takes care of yourself. It takes you out of the fight and flight. So the focus in that moment should be, how can I come out of fight and flight mode? Once they come out of fight and flight mode, you'll notice lifestyle changes already being made because
Mhm.
they'll start enjoying this side. But if they're used to in this side, then our system will resist them coming out of fight and flight mode. Yeah. And in the day-to-day life, when people are afraid, it's because of the image that they want to put out there. Very simple way with such people to work is, uh, only ask them, who are the people that you really look forward to, like people that you feel are very human in nature, and they'll say this. What about them that you really like? What is it about them that you would really like to have in yourself? This part. Are you doing something in your life to align with this part? And they're like, oh, I'm very, very image conscious. What kind of life that you want to live? How you would like people to, what is your definition of authentic, living life authentically? Then they'll question, oh, this is what authenticity means for me. And what in your day-to-day life you are doing things that shows that you are not authentic in nature. Then they'll reflect. There are a lot of layers to fears as well. First, understand where it comes from, then understand how it manifests, then understand that how can I take care of like different layers of fear, the activity that I gave you. Even the activity that I gave you takes you out of your fight and flight response. And everything that we are talking about collectively all comes back to your nervous system. Everything comes back to your nervous system. Every well being class out there in the world is just taking care of your nervous system. Simple,
Yeah,
taking you out of fight and flight and survival mode. Once they come out of it, they'll navigate how to take care of it. Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
thanks for Divyanshi, for sharing such wisdom with us on this episode. Any final thoughts you have to be shared with our listeners?
I think I'll really appreciate this podcast for one thing. That's something that I really don't find usually out there is you letting the audience know that we are not perfect. We haven't done the work. We are still working on so many things. We are so bad with some things that we are still navigating. Uh, so I really like that how in this podcast you are building a podcast not only of light but also the shadow part of you to coexist with the light, and that's very rare. That's very rare. I always want to build such spaces where people are talking about their vulnerability, their shadows, and they are wearing it like so. I think it was really refreshing to see something like that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so much, Pulkit. Yeah,
My pleasure. My
yeah.
pleasure. Thank you, Divyanshi. And listeners, if you have any queries, we will be sharing Divyanshi's contact details in the description below. Feel free to reach out to her. Or if you want to, suggest any new topic or any new, guest we can invite on the podcast, please feel free to share your recommendations. And don't forget to subscribe us. Thank you. And remember, we are listening.